They came from the stars not with warships, but with scrolls. The Erakai were the oldest known species in the galaxy. Ancient, tall, and impossibly graceful, they arrived on Earth cloaked in silvery light, offering knowledge instead of conquest. They spoke of enlightenment, of lifting young races into the fold of the galactic accord. Earth had just scraped past nuclear ruin a century earlier. We were messy, chaotic, emotional. But the Erakai saw something in us, potential. They called us the Fireborn. Out of billions, they selected 12 human children, orphans, prodigies, the overlooked. Among them was me, Ari Vale. Born in the ruins of New Jakarta, I was nothing. No family, no future. But they saw what I didn't, something buried, something they could mold. They took us off-world to a moon they called Tellurin, a garden world orbiting a dying blue star. There, they taught us their ways, not just technology or language, but philosophy. Balance, control, patience. The Erakai revered order above all. They spoke of chaos as disease, emotion as danger, passion as weakness. And so, we were told to bury ours. At first, it felt like a dream. We learned faster than even they expected. Our minds adapted. Our bodies, stronger in gravity, grew lean and sharp. We absorbed centuries of knowledge in years. I watched my fellow humans change, from frightened teens to disciplined thinkers. But I never forgot who I was, what Earth was. Where they saw chaos, I saw color. Where they heard noise, I heard music. Where they feared fire, I learned to breathe it. One night, as twin moons rose over the crystalline plains of Tellurin, I crept out to the cliffs beyond the citadel. There I met Kyle. He wasn't one of us. He was a dragon. Not a myth, at least not here. He was a Drakari, one of the few remaining biografted war beasts from the old wars, now forgotten and bound in servitude. His wings were torn, his body scarred, but his eyes burned with defiance. "I thought your kind were extinct," I whispered. He stared at me with gold-flared pupils. "And I thought yours were cowards. We became, not friends, not yet. But there was something shared, a hunger for something beyond stillness, beyond obedience." The Erakai watched us closely. They encouraged perfection, harmony. But beneath their robes and riddles I began to see fear, not of us, but of what we could become. They didn't want equals. They wanted disciples, obedient, grateful, predictable. But humans don't stay quiet forever. And dragons don't kneel. When Kale whispered of old ruins beneath the citadel, places sealed since the War of Silences, I listened. And when he told me the Erakai had burned entire species for failing to ascend, I stopped dreaming and started preparing. We weren't chosen to rise, we were chosen to serve, but something ancient stirred in me, in all of us. A memory not of books or balance, but of rebellion, of fire and flight. They called us Fireborn. They had no idea how true that was. The tunnels were older than anything the Erakai had shown us. I followed Kale through a cracked obsidian corridor, far below the pristine towers of the citadel. The walls pulsed faintly with ancient power, runes etched in an angular script that didn't match the elegant curvature of Erakai writing. This was something older, raw, unfiltered. "This wasn't built by them," I whispered. Kyle's tail flicked. "No, they buried it." We moved in silence, the only sound the faint hum of dormant machines and the occasional drip of condensation echoing like thunder in the deep. My boots crunched against old dust and bone. Human? Alien? I wasn't sure. I didn't want to know. The deeper we went, the more the air changed. It grew warm, charged like lightning in your lungs. Kyle's pace slowed near a vast chamber, its doors sealed by massive interlocking glyphs. "I can't open this," he growled. "But you might." "Why me?" "Because your blood burns." I raised a hand to the glyphs. As soon as my skin touched stone, the carvings flared bright orange. Heat coursed through my fingers like fire, but it didn't hurt. It welcomed me. The door split open with a hiss. Inside was a vault, massive, circular, and humming with forgotten power. Hanging above a central pedestal was a set of armor unlike anything I'd ever seen. Jagged metal plates, glowing with inner fire, shaped like wings and fangs and war Drakari craftsmanship, but more human design influence. A fusion, I muttered. Human and dragon. Kyle bowed his head. The last rider wore that. He died defying the Erakai when they tried to wipe us out. His name was Chiron. I stepped forward. The armor pulsed in response. Kale continued. They feared what we could become, a union of fury and intelligence, of instinct and will. A weapon, I said. No, he corrected. A wildfire. Back at the surface, the other human disciples continued their training. Meditation, balance, obedience. They hadn't seen what I had, not yet. But I planted seeds, in words and glances, in questions that made them squirm. What if we're not supposed to suppress emotion? What if anger isn't weakness? What if the Erakai don't fear our chaos, but our clarity? Some began to listen, quietly, cautiously. Others reported me. But the elders did nothing. They thought rebellion was beneath us now, that we were tamed. They were wrong. 2 weeks later, we returned to the vault. Kyle wasn't alone. 3 more Drakari waited, old, winged, silent as statues. One of them, blind in one eye, sniffed the air and grinned with razor teeth. She smells like Chiron. I stepped into the armor. It welcomed me like a second skin, light, yet solid, as though it had waited for centuries just for this moment. Flames ignited along the seams. My fingers glowed. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel out of place. I felt whole. We emerged from the ruins in the dead of night. The citadel loomed above like a silver spider. The elders were in meditation. The guards, few arrogant, saw us too late. Kyle dropped the first with a roar. I disabled the second with a blast of kinetic fire I didn't even know I could summon. I didn't want to kill. But I wasn't going to bow either. By dawn, the truth was out. Not all disciples followed me, but enough did, and the Erakai. They finally saw what they'd created. Not disciples, not students, not pets. We were something new, something ancient reborn. We were riders of flame, and we had questions they didn't want to answer. They called it insurrection. We called it waking up. After our escape from the vault and the skirmish at the citadel gates, Kyle and I fled into the dead canyons beyond the crystal forests. At night, the wind howled with the voices of old gods, and ancient stone whispered memories of wars the Erakai buried. We weren't alone. By the end of the week, 2 more disciples joined us. Rehea, a healer who'd always questioned the elders' silence, and Thomas, a tech adept with implants too advanced for our primitive world. They had felt the pull, too, the deep hum beneath the soil, the hidden truth behind the psionic training. The Erakai didn't uplift us. They contained us. We weren't chosen because we were gifted, Thomas spat one night over a fire built from glowing fire root branches. We were chosen because we were manageable, Rhea nodded grimly. Until you weren't. They tried to hunt us, subtle at first. Drones, whisperers in the minds of those we once called friends. Then came the assassins, psionic shadows wrapped in silk and certainty. They underestimated the bond between Rider and Drakari. Kyle didn't sleep. The others, Eren, Jorok, even blind old Talek, sensed danger before it struck. In the ancient code of the Drakari, there is no mercy for cowards who hide behind mind games. When the first assassin arrived, I met her in the ruins of a temple carved into a mountain shaped like a fang. You could have been more, she said, voice dripping with elegance and disdain. I am more, I answered, and let the armor ignite. Our movement spread. Across the disciple cities, whispers bloomed into rallies and quiet questions became firebrand speeches. Some humans resisted, still chained by obedience, still fearful of offending their mentors. Others chose fire, and not just humans. Some Erakai, young, curious, tired of doctrine, began to listen. One named Seralis defected, bringing forbidden archives. We read truth so old they crumbled on contact. We saw images of riders, Long before the Erakai rewrote their own history, the riders weren't students. They were equals, co-creators of the Alliance, fused with Drakari, united in flame and purpose. But then the humans asked for more: autonomy, voice, identity. So the Erakai cut them down, rewrote the memory, erased their names. We were the forgotten generation, but not anymore. We carved our symbol into the cliffs above the Dawnspire Plateau, a dragon curled around a human hand. Not for dominance, for trust. Disciples no more, I told them during the first gathering of the Flamebound. We are riders reborn. Kyle stood beside me, wings outstretched, eyes burning with pride. The signal we sent that day echoed across systems. A challenge, a declaration. The Erakai sent an envoy, robed, regal, unreadable. You will undo millennia of peace, he warned. No, I said. We'll undo millennia of lies. We gave them a chance. We offered truth. They offered silence. They still thought we were students. They didn't yet understand. We didn't want war. We were just willing to finish one. They came at dawn, cloaked in golden silence. The Erakai don't fight like we do. They erase, quietly, efficiently, without spectacle. That morning, they intended to cleanse the plateau of our rebellion as if brushing dust from a scroll. But we were no longer disciples. We were riders. The wind shifted first. Kyle felt it. His tail flicked once, a silent signal. In the shadow of Dawnspire, every rider stopped breathing as the sky shimmered with cloaked ships. Light bent unnaturally, rippling like oil on water. Seralis, our defector, whispered, "They're deploying Thoughtbreakers," Rhea cursed. "Psionic dampeners. They're trying to cut our link to the Drakari." I looked to Kale. His eyes flared like twin stars. "Let them try," he growled. They unleashed the first wave, drones swarming like locusts, firing stun pulses and memory scramblers. Behind them, the Thoughtbreakers, tall constructs of bone and silver, pulsing with psychic interference. The goal wasn't to kill, it was to erase us. But this wasn't our first war. It was theirs. We moved as one. The bond between Ryder and Drakari wasn't wireless, it was elemental. They could disrupt psionics, but they couldn't sever fire. Kale roared, a sound that cracked stone. The air ignited around him as he launched upward, talons shredding a drone mid-flight. Behind me, Jorek and his Drakari, Vex, took the flank, firebolts searing across the valley. The Thoughtbreakers advanced, their minds like knives, whispers trying to peel our memories apart. I felt one stab at my consciousness, digging for my fear. It found Kyle instead. "Burn," he snarled, and it did. The construct collapsed, reduced to molten steel. We fought for hours. Thomas reprogrammed drone clusters mid-air, turning them on their masters. Rhea became a blur of healing light, stabilizing fallen riders and patching burning scale. But it was Seralis who changed the tide. He stepped into the path of the second wave. No armor, no weapon, just ancient truth. He broadcast the lost records we'd recovered, images of the original human Drakari alliance, of broken pacts, of betrayal. The signal reached every disciple city. It reached them. Some Erakai stopped fighting, others didn't. A battle became a schism, and the schism became a war. By nightfall, the plateau was ours, but not without cost. Dozens of riders fell. Kyle's wings were scorched, and my ribs ached with every breath. We buried our dead beneath stones carved with fire runes and left a beacon that would never be hidden again. I stood at the edge of the cliff, wind whipping through my hair, Kyle beside me. Below, the ashes of Thoughtbreakers scattered into starlight. "They'll return?" Rhea said behind me. "I hope they do," I answered. "They still don't understand," Kyle added. "They came for disciples, and found dragons," I finished. We lit the sky that night with flame and fury. It would be the first of many battles, but it was also the first time in generations that humans and Drakari fought as one, and the galaxy took notice. The war didn't end after Dawnspire. It only grew teeth. What began as a skirmish on one forgotten plateau became a firestorm across systems. Word spread, The dragons had returned, and they were bonded to the lost children of Earth. The HFY High Order called it blasphemy. We called it the Burning Pact. We took the old ways and turned them inside out. Our riders, once outcasts, orphans, scholars, scavengers, were now war-born leaders. Thomas designed mobile forges powered by dragonfire. Rhea led diplomatic missions on Dragonback to reawaken old human enclaves scattered across fringe systems. And I flew with Kyle into the black heart of Empire space. We weren't just fighting to survive. We were fighting for something deeper, memory and choice and flame. We weren't their students anymore. We were their reckoning. One planet at a time, their illusion of control cracked. We liberated Coran 6, where human minds had been uploaded into crystalline obedience. We burned the mind prison towers and watched as the clouds lit up with 1,000,000 freed voices. We rallied the moon tribes of Holohim, who had always worshipped dragons as spirits of change. When they saw Kale land, they wept, not in fear but recognition. We weren't alone, but with every victory, the HFY grew more brutal. They sent sunsplitter frigates, mindstorms, void sirens that whispered doubt into sleeping camps. They harvested dream thought and tried to reprogram newborn Drakari hatchlings with their false light. And then came the worst of it, the Vesture Protocol, the turning of bonded riders into vessels for HFY control. We lost Jorak to it. I held his hand as the light left his eyes, and the machine voice whispered, "Return to servitude, deviant." Kyle incinerated the remains with honor. We buried the man, not the weapon. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kale curled around me, shielding me from the cold and the silence. "They'll come harder," I said. "They always do," he murmured. "But this time we're not running." "No," he agreed. "This time, we're flying straight into their sun." So we lit the stars, we called on the broken, the exiled, the outcast, all who remembered Earth or the dragons or the first fires. Not just humans, not just Drakari, but other forgotten disciples. We weren't their failed students anymore. We were a new order entirely. We called ourselves the Scorched Covenant, bound not by obedience, but by choice. And as our numbers grew and the sky turned red with warlight, I saw something I hadn't seen since I was a girl. Hope, a burning kind of hope, the kind only dragons bring. The skies above the HFY homeworld burned like a forge. We had come to end this. No more hiding in shadows. No more fractured rebellion. The Scorched Covenant, humans and dragons united, were here to reclaim our legacy. The HFY citadel loomed before us, a monstrous spire of obsidian glass and cold metal, stretching into swirling storm clouds. Their fleets encircled the planet like a web, but none could match the fury of our dragon's wings. Kyle and I led the vanguard, weaving through anti-air batteries as dragonfire rained on ground forces. Behind us surged the riders, scarred, fierce, and unyielding. The battle was brutal. The HFY unleashed everything. Void storms that warped the very air, plasma storms that cut through dragon scales, and mechanized legions whose footsteps shook the soil. But they underestimated us. We fought not just with claws and fire, but with hearts forged in shared pain and fierce hope. The dragon's flame was more than destruction. It was a beacon. One by one the bastions fell. The citadel cracked, shattered by a storm of fire and fury. Inside, the HFY High Council awaited, cloaked in arrogance. But they had not counted on the power of choice. We stormed the throne room where the leader, the sovereign, greeted us with a sneer. "You dare defy the destiny written for you?" I stepped forward, voice steady. "We write our own destiny." Kyle unleashed a roar that shook the chamber. Together, dragons and riders battled the last vestiges of tyranny. The sovereign fell, not with rage, but with disbelief. A new dawn rose over the shattered spires. In the aftermath, the Scorched Covenant did not become conquerors. We became guardians. Guardians of freedom, memory, and the ancient flame rekindled in every soul. Dragons and humans, no longer master and disciple, but partners in a galaxy that would never forget their names. As I looked to the stars, wings folded but ready to rise, I knew this was only the beginning. For every shadow the galaxy hides, there will always be those who choose to burn bright. The scorched covenant was born in fire, and in fire we shall endure.